Have you heard of that? Assassin's Creed Mirage. You know, it's the new one, but they've made it like the old one. It's just like the first game, basically. It's set in the same place as the first game. Well, not quite the same place. About 1,000 miles away from where the first game's set and about 300 years earlier. So, but you know, it's in the same geographic area, you know, the Middle East, in the same way that Hartlepool and Zurich are in the same geographic area. Look, it's nothing like the first game, right? It's nothing like the first game. Okay, that said, it's full of homages to the first game and echoes of the first game, and indeed the games as they were before the series pivoted fully into that RPG mode, and every single one of them was an endless 300-hour slog through a mostly empty half-continent, whereas before you'd have a city or a handful of cities that were really densely packed with stuff to do. Origins came along in 2017 and stretched the Assassin's Creed formula out across a very significant portion of North Africa. And then we had the entirety of Greece. And then we had England, Viking England, not even an England that had a lot of verticality, an England that was mostly sort of mud huts and muddy streets and mud and entirely anachronistic nods to Robin Hood and also more mud. The last game, Valhalla, was a bit of a slog at the best of times, and I think most of us are broadly in agreement on that. So what Mirage intends to do is right the ship, course correct an Assassin's Creed franchise that has gone a little bit off the rails, frankly, in recent years. I know I mixed a metaphor there, right? But in my defense, don't have an excuse. Nor could I excuse myself from playing 4 hours of Assassin's Creed Mirage at a recent preview session courtesy of Ubisoft. The footage you're currently watching is me playing the game, and I had a really good time. But the main thing I want to get across to people who are interested in this game is that if you're looking forward to Mirage because you're under the impression that this is the series moving on from the big RPGs, moving on from Valhalla specifically, a game of which there is far too much already if you count the enormous base game and the huge DLCs that have already come out for it, you might want to temper those expectations for a little bit, because if you're sick of Valhalla, you need to know that Mirage is essentially, it's more Valhalla, right? And despite how different the setting is and everything else, it looks like Valhalla, it plays like Valhalla, it's even got the same fonts as Valhalla. So in a world where people are notably very tired of the big Assassin's Creeds that seem to take forever to finish, this is a bit of a tricky proposition. Even if Mirage itself is a more manageable length than the games it is spun off from, if it doesn't feel substantially different from Valhalla, that's not going to matter, because you're going to feel like you've already played this thing for 150 hours or whatever. And as an aside, it's really funny that one of the big selling points of this game is that you're not going to have to play this one for as long as the last one, we promise. Like, we're not going to take up as much of your time. Like, that's how you market quick setting cement, surely, not a video game. But anyway, after a few hours with Valhalla, my big takeaway was that it does feel substantially different enough, despite initial impressions, to justify spinning off into its own game, first and foremost. But also, if we're going to compare this to the other Valhalla DLCs, and I think it is still an apt comparison, Mirage is so much better than all of them, and I think on that basis I completely understand the decision to spin this one off. The mechanics have been tweaked. Firstly, the combat feels a bit more high stakes. At the 15-hour mark into Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Origins or Odyssey, you could do most of the fights with your eyes closed. Parry, dodge, special, rinse, repeat. Valhalla is one of the few games that I, a fat-fingered idiot, have turned the difficulty up in because it's just really boring otherwise. But Mirage felt a lot fresher to me. Basim isn't as much of a brute or a bruiser as Ivor is. You need to leverage his finesse a lot more. If you take your eye off the ball, you can get battered quickly. Now, I'm not saying Mirage is a hard game or that it's any less Fisher-Price than the other Assassin's Creed games, but it's just a bit more interesting. Even after a few hours, I didn't feel like I was on autopilot all the time, which is quite an improvement. Also improved is the investigation mechanics, which do take a lot of inspiration from the first game. It brings back eavesdropping and stuff like that. You'd be doing a lot of sitting on benches in Mirage, I think. There's plenty of detective work to get on with in Valhalla, of course, but it's just a bit more involved in Mirage. It's just expanded upon, and there's even a few branching points I noticed where certain scenes can actually go different ways depending on certain decisions you've made, or how many of a particular type of resource you've collected in the wider game, or how much cash you've got. In the slice that we played, there was a bit of Monkey Island-esque back and forth we had to do in order to uncover the identity of a target and then later gain access to their lair, but it wasn't a linear checklist. Opportunities presented themselves that could be taken, ignored, or missed entirely. There's a lot more depth to the rote sequencing of events that we're used to in the series, and while the endpoint is always a matter of inserting a length of metal into somebody's throat, the means to that end aren't going to be the same for every player. This is an exciting prospect. Mirage may have considerably more replay value than any Assassin's Creed game before it, and as someone who replays them all on a regular basis, that's quite mouthwatering. What's also exciting is the prospect of exploring the bustling metropolis of ancient Baghdad. Baghdad is beautiful. It's a vibrant city that teems with life in a way we haven't seen in Assassin's Creed since Unity, frankly. That game's revolutionary Paris had such an intense sense of place that you could almost smell the gunpowder, and it's a similar story here, though the smells are probably a lot sweeter. I mean, Paris smells like a toilet now, let alone back then. Though we sadly only had enough time to go through the main assassination in this vertical slice once, I could already see a bunch of ways that it could have gone differently had I had different things in my inventory, had I had more money, had I missed a particular opportunity that I only noticed because I went a bit off-piste. So I'm excited about the idea that this actually has a lot of replay value. I'm also excited about the fact that it's returning to the one large city model of Unity and Syndicate. And despite what I said earlier about how this isn't really the quasi remake of the first game that some quarters are making it out to be, there are some really exciting echoes of the first game, not just the investigation stuff, but also the fact that you get to explore Alamut Castle, which is this game's equivalent of the fortress at Masyaf of the first game. And like Masyaf, it is a real location, it is a real assassin's fortress that they have folded into the mythology of the games, and it looks incredible. I don't think Mirage is any kind of jumping on point or even a jumping back point for people who grew tired of the series a few games back. It might have got rid of a lot of the bloat, but it still has all the baggage, and that's fine, you know? It's kind of like people who are still watching Star Trek, or people who are like who watched like Supernatural for its entire run instead of bailing after season 5 like any sensible person would have done. At this point, Assassin's Creed only has to preach to the converted, and it's perfectly justified in assuming prior knowledge when it comes out with a game that is a prequel not only to the previous game but also to the first game. You know, where it sits in the timeline isn't exactly complicated, but you don't want to explain it to someone at a party because you will get asked to leave. At this point, Assassin's Creed is what it is. It's entrenched in its own mythology. It is built for people who are already invested, people who already love it. It's built for me. They make this shit for me now. They make it for me. They make it for me specifically. They make it for Jim Trinker. They should call it Jim Trinker's Assassin's Creed. You know, like a George Foreman grill. You know, he didn't make the grills, right? Anyway.